Member of the Opposition, Honorable Chonyo Smate. Next to me, former Minister, Honorable Fayaz Koya, and the Assistant Minister for Justice, the Honorable Ratu Jose Nyundamu, and myself, Rakuita Bakalalambure, as Chairman of the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Justice, Law and Human Rights. Thank you very much to those of you who have come in early this morning. I take that you, in your presentation, with respect to the bills that you'll be presenting on or making submissions, so please do state your name for the record, as this is a live submission, and state which bills that you'll be making submissions on, because there are currently 5 or 6 bills that is before 5 bills, so that we can just adjust which bills that you'll be presenting on. So without further ado, I don't want to take too much time, as we are here to hear from you. We have our first submittee, former Minister, Dr. Reddy. Thank you very much for coming in, and welcome again to Parliament. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Chair, and esteemed members of the committee. Good morning to you all. It's a pleasure to appear before you. My name is Mahendra Reddy, and I'm a senior fellow and senior economist at the University of the South Pacific, based at the Statham Street campus here in Suva. I want to begin by thanking Honorable Usamate, who contacted me and said that if I could make a contribution to the Statistics Bill 2026, and I'm honored to be here to make a detailed contribution on the bill. And before that, I had sent a soft copy. I don't know whether you have a copy of that. I had sent, so my apologies if you are not able to receive the copy. Okay, thank you. So, Chair, let me begin. I commend the government for introducing the Statistics Bill 2026. The bill represents a significant improvement over Statistics Act 1961 and aligns Fiji with modern international statistics principles. The bill appropriately emphasizes data collection, coordination, quality assurance, confidentiality, data sharing, and statistical independence. However, statistics globally have evolved beyond periodic surveys and publication report. The world is now moving towards real-time, integrated, predictive, and policy-oriented statistical systems. So my submission, therefore, focuses on strengthening the bill so that the Fiji Bureau of Statistics becomes not merely a collector of information, but a central national intelligence system capable of supporting government, businesses, and communities before, during, and after major social, economic, and environmental shocks. So, Chair, I will now explicitly list down the key recommendations and where in the Act to make this amendment. So, number one, I suggest that we establish a longitudinal national household statistical register. So, Chair, what I mean by that, you've got two types of data, cross-sectional. Cross-sectional data means at a particular point in time, you go and collect data. For example, census surveys, population surveys, agriculture census, these are cross-sectional data. So at a particular point in time, let's say agriculture census 2020, for that 4-week period, you go and collect data on all the agriculture activities, the households, the farmers, etc. That's called cross-sectional data. Then you've got time series data, for example, at the national level, GDP over the last 20, 30 years, or unemployment rate, or export. What I'm suggesting here is that we have a database of longitudinal data. Longitudinal means if you want to find out the poverty status of a household at a particular point in time, but you also monitor the household over the last 20 years to see what has happened to the household. So, Chair and members of the panel, I'll explain how we could do that. So Chair, what I'm saying is that the most important reform absent from the bill is the establishment of a continuously update household level database. So we go every 10 years to do agriculture census, but we are not monitoring what is happening to that farm household during the time period. We go and do a household income and expenditure survey at I think 10-year intervals, but we don't monitor what's happening to the household over time. So what we are saying is that longitudinal data is that you take that particular, whatever those identified households are, monitor them over the last 30 years, as well as the cross-sectional data. So the Bureau, so Section 16 provides for statistical register, but does not require the Bureau to maintain dynamic longitudinal records on households, villages, settlements, and communities. So the Bureau should be mandated to maintain a continuously updated national household statistical register. Such a register should contain household location, household composition, household characteristics, income and employment status, agriculture activities, disability status, social welfare, disaster vulnerability indicators, and migration history. So, Chair, the benefits of this would be when a cyclone or flood, drought, pandemic, etc. happens, we immediately know which households are affected, with the vulnerable persons living in the affected areas, the farmers that require access, etc. So, Chair, I recommend that Section 16, by making the maintenance of a dynamic household register mandatory rather than optional. Okay? So, what we could do is to insert Section 13.3, 13.7, the Bureau must establish and maintain a national household statistical register containing information on household, dwelling, family, etc. And then subsection 4, the national household statistical register may contain information relating to household composition, geographical location, housing characteristics, etc. up till J. So I've listed, the actual changes that need to be made in that particular section, in 5, 6, and 7. My second recommendation, Chair, is that we move from cross-sectional statistics to time series microdata. So, Chair, what I'm saying is that we've been only collecting cross-sectional data, snapshot at a particular point, whether it's a 10-year interval or 5-year, etc. What I'm saying, Chair, we have close to about 250, 260 households, entire Fiji. It's a small, if you fly on top of Fiji, you see, small islands. We can have absolute capture of the entire geographical space in a snapshot if you start linking, and I'm going to talk about in a second about these identifiers, and then anyone moves from the place, let's say from Dongutuki to Subasquata, immediately the database here needs to record that. Any movement in the village, any movement in the settlement, any movement in the province, we need to real-time data needs to be updated in that particular room. The data will immediately come in. Mandatory. So the Bureau currently focuses heavily on cross-sectional surveys. Modern policy requires longitudinal data. The bill should explicitly require Bureau to track households over time, track labor market transitions, track business performance over time, track poverty movements, track migration pattern, track climate vulnerability indicators. So, Mr. Chair, the way I suggest is that we add a new function under Section 15 requiring longitudinal statistical monitoring of households, businesses, and communities in region. So, after Section 15H, we insert to establish, maintain, and analyze longitudinal statistical database or data set. So, again, I'm suggesting we insert new Section 15J. My third recommendation, Chair, is that we create a national early warning and predictivity analytics function. At the moment, Chair, the Bureau just collects data, publishes in the report, that's it. I'm saying no, that should not be the only function of Bureau. So the Bureau should not merely report what has happened, the snapshot of the household income and expenditure survey, or its agriculture census, population census. It should help predict, Honorable Member, welcome. It should help predict what is likely to happen. So the Bureau should establish predictive analytics system capable of forecasting poverty increases, employment losses, food insecurity, migration trends, climate risks, housing vulnerability, inflation impacts on vulnerable households. So, Chair, I recommend that we insert a new function under Section 15 to undertake predictive statistical analysis and provide early warning information to government-relevant stakeholders regarding emerging economic, social, demographic, and environmental risk. Chair and members, my fourth recommendation is that open access to primary data. Chair, it's impossible to get primary data from Bureau of Stats. I've tried it. So I recommend that we should include a presumption in favor of releasing anonymized microdata unless they are compelling confidentiality concerns. Researchers should have access through secure data laboratories and approved online portals. Chair, we're spending millions of dollars to collect these data, whether it's agriculture census, population census, HIS, household income and expenditure survey. Why don't we allow master students, PhD students, any researcher to use the data, say, this is the data. Let the data speak. One data set. If someone fudges the data, we can go back and do the same analysis and then take that person to task. So, Chair, I've suggested how we do the amendments. Amendment section 39.1, and then 39.5 and 39.6 and 39.7 and 39.8. These are the relevant sections that need to be amended, and I've suggested clearly how we do the amendment. Chair, my number 5th recommendation is that we create a national data literacy program. Chair, at the moment, the Bureau collects enormous amount of data, amazing data. But Chair, who understands this data? You and I, of course, we understand. The university lecturers understand. The government senior PS and all those who have diploma degree understand. How about the people outside government? How about ordinary rank and file? We're spending so much. So, Chair, what I'm suggesting is that the Bureau should not only produce statistics, it should educate citizens on understanding the statistics. I mean, what do you mean by foreign reserve? I mean, the Reserve Bank governor comes and says, our foreign reserve is quite healthy, it's 4 months equivalent of import, 4 months of import equivalent. But what does it mean to the ordinary Fijians? So what I've suggested, Chair, is we amend, under section 15, we insert to promote statistical literacy and public understanding of officers through education, training, and outreach programs. So there'll be a section of Bureau who will go out and run these small courses, short training programs where the business sector will come and they'll say, I want this table to be interpreted for me. What does it mean, balance of payment? What does it mean for me as a business person who is importing and exporting? What does it mean in terms of the foreign currency exchange rate changing? So, Chair, number 6, I'm saying, for the first time ever, let's include local government and village level statistics. At the moment, we are basically not going down to the micro units for which we will be making policies. So why don't we collect detailed data at the village level, settlements, quarters, municipal, district, provinces? Each area should have regularly updated development indicators. So to do that, we expand Schedule 1 to require production of subnational statistical indicators. Chair, number 7, introduce geospatial statistics. I just don't know why in this revision they've not included geospatial statistics to be collected through GIS and satellite image. You look at New Zealand, Chair, their Bureau of Stats, they have included that, Australia, US, Canada, the larger countries. I suggest we should add in that geospatial and spatially referenced statistics to section 15. So we can insert in 15I to develop and maintain and utilize geospatial information system. We now it's a big thing, in terms of collecting data through satellite and through drones and through GIS. Chair, number 8, I want to comment on to strengthen independence and governance, government certification. Chair, there are two aspects of independence. It is professional independence and institutional independence. To some extent, the current act allows for professional independence. It ensures that minister cannot ask that you change the methodology or change the calculation of this, etc. To some extent. So professional independence is allowed to some extent. But we need to strengthen that. But institutional independence is not guaranteed. So what I've suggested here is that we recommend that institutional independence means that the appointment and the removal and termination of these government certification, that independence at the moment it is not covered by the Act. So I'm suggesting that we, for institutional independence, recommend amending clause 17 by inserting new subsection 3 to 8. The appointment of the government shall be made following an open, transparent, merit-based recruitment. The minister shall establish an independent selection panel. The government shall be appointed for a term of 5 years and shall be eligible for reappointment. The government may only be removed from office on grounds of incapacity, serious misconduct, bankruptcy, or conviction. Removal from office shall occur only following an independent review process. The reasons for removal shall be published. So that's on institutional independence. On professional independence, I suggest we strengthen that by adding a new paragraph 19C. The government institutions shall not be subject to direction by the minister or any other person in relation to statistical methodology, statistical standards, data collection, analysis. These are the experts. The expert is the government statistician. So no one outside should dictate. So I suggest we re-look at that and add this to strengthen professional independence. Chair and members, I now turn to recommendation 9. We expand the membership of the Statistical Advisory Council. Chair is very weak at the moment. The uses of the data is outside government. But if you look at now, universities, research institutions, private sector users, civil society organizations, NGOs, they are not in there, except there's a very minor suggestion there, plus only up to 3 representatives from local research facility, tertiary institution, or other organized deemed necessary by the chairperson. It is too discretionary and too limited. So it does not cover the universities, the NGOs, business sector, etc., Chamber of Commerce, etc. So I suggest that clause 6 should be amended to ensure broader representation of key users and contributors. So I've added there in detail how we do the amendment. So in that we can add a tertiary institution, a research institution, business organization, agriculture organizations, civil society organization, and the IT sector can be represented as well. Chair, my 10th recommendation is we introduce a national data integration framework. So I would strongly emphasize that every household, business and agriculture holding in Fiji should have a unique statistical identifier. So this single reform would transform disaster response, poverty targeting, social welfare delivery, agriculture support, and development planning more than any other amendment in the current bill. Chair. It would be built upon the existing statistical register provisions in section 16. So examples would be, there'll be a household ID, there'll be a business ID, property ID, agriculture holder ID, and this would dramatically improve policy analysis while reducing survey cost. So, Chair, I've explicitly cited which clause 26, how we could amend that, and that 26.1 we add 1A-B, which I've stated there. Chair, my 11th one is that we establish a national data portal. We need to modernize our national data portal. The portal should provide downloadable data sets, interactive dashboards, and geospatial maps, visual tools, metadata repositories, and application programming interfaces for research and developers. I mean, it's a pain. You call, you email to ask for data, you don't get response, they're busy, etc. There should be a portal where the data are uploaded, unless it's confidential, fair enough. And then we just go into the portal and we download those data, like, we have to some extent the RBF and data portal. All official statistics should be available through a modern open data platform, providing downloadable data sets, dashboards, maps, interactive visualization, etc. So, Chair, on page 16, I've stated exactly how, what clauses to add and how to amend those. So I've given there. So that was my last recommendation, Chair. So I conclude by stating that the Statistics Bill 2026 is a major step forward, and I think we should not lose this opportunity to really bring it down, make the Bureau of Stats a modern statistical institution. However, the future of official statistics lies not merely in collecting information, but in transforming the data into intelligence, national intelligence. This is a very important bill because it moves Fiji from a traditional survey-based statistical system to a modern data-driven statistical system. But the bill at the moment reflects a largely 20th century view of statistics, that is collecting and compiling and publishing it. So the world is moving towards a real-time, integrated, predictive, and policy-oriented statistical system. So I suggest that the committee take into account the above recommendations. Chair, I will leave the soft copy and hard copy, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Now I leave Dr. Reddy for your comprehensive submission. Honorable members, are there any comments? Yes, Honorable Koa.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Dr. Reddy, for your very fruitful submissions that you've made. I have a very simple question. Data, as you put it, is extremely important for development purposes and whatever it is that the country needs to do with respect to a particular part of society, etc., all that kind of stuff. But I'm just mindful of the fact that in the landscape that exists today, what would you say with respect to the use of artificial intelligence, AI usage in data thing? Should it be forbidden? Should there be a provision in there that says this is data, real-time data, this is needed for the purposes of development, etc.? We need to make sure that we get the full facts. Bearing in mind, you would know better than me also about the use of AI. Should there be an inclusion in here with respect to the usage of AI?
Chair, through you, not really, because without data, AI will give all kinds of commentaries or narrative. But if you give the data, AI will give you, if you use OpenAI and use the same data, it will give you the same story, but in a different language. Honorable Usmate will go two hours later, use AI, put the data and say, ask AI, these are the prompts. It will give you the same answer, but in a different language. So the thing is this, if you don't provide data, it's very dangerous for people to use AI and come up with all kinds of conclusions. But if you give data, no matter what AI tool they use, they will tell the same story. So in fact, by providing data, you are negating the negative impact of AI on potential conclusions.
My question relates to, and I'll give you the example, my question relates to, for example, in the UK Parliament, right? They use AI, but the last eyes on any document is always the human eye, in order to, because they have tried it and tested it, and it basically says that sometimes when a solution cannot be found, it will make up one. So in the world of where we need to ensure that the data is correct, when you gather statistics or when you, any part of the operation of this particular bill, I'm not necessarily saying that you load the statistical data from here, from what the authorities actually do, but the use of AI in the getting of data, etc., that needs to be done. That's more the point, because it can concoct a solution. That's the problem.
So AI will not be used to get the data. AI will be used to analyze the data. So that's where I think we differ. If the AI is used to analyze the data, then there's one data. You can use cloud, you can use ChatGPT, it will give you the same story. But in the absence of the data, then AI will assume all kinds of things, scenarios, and that's the dangerous part. I don't know whether I've answered your question, but
You do see a problem in that particular area.
Yeah.
So is it something, my question really now to you is there something that needs to be put in here with respect to the use of AI?
Yes, sir. But it will be better in the absence of the data. You will see all kinds of analysis, people making all kinds of comments. But say this is the one data. If someone says, you go back to the data and say, does the data say this? There's only one data set. There's only one data set. There has to be only one data set about GDP. There's only one data set about poverty. If people are saying that the Ethiopians in the interior are becoming more poverty, the data has to tell. Go back and look at the data whether it's true or not. Whether it's talking about absolute poverty or relative poverty.
Naka, thank you, Dr. Reddy. Any more comments? Yes, Honorable Usmati.
Jackson, just pull up 39. Yeah, Dr. Ed, you've asked for a lot of things to get data on individuals and households. And I was just thinking at one time the government was thinking about a national ID card for everybody. You think that sort of a system would help to be able to do
Absolutely.
that? Yeah.
Through the chair, I tell you, we have to get that. What I'm saying, Chair, Honorable Usmata, is that we need to have absolute capture of all the households in the Fiji. Why are we not? It's such a small, there's about no more than 300,000 households in the country. It's just like, you look at highly populated countries, China and India. We can get every data about the household. And then the household will say, at the moment, last year at my home in Tangimode Street, we were 3 members. This year we are 2. So immediately I would have reported that my son is now going to New Zealand to study. We are now 2 members in that household. So same thing in the village, the 2 members in the household, the 2 members need to be assisted post a cyclone or flood. Immediately, we don't have to go now and do a survey to find out what is the level of number of households affected. We just know which area has been affected through the satellite or through GIS, and then we know in this area, these are the number of households, these are the number of people living in that household, because you've got this real-time data. That data has been updated. Every day is being updated because you are linked to the household. By law, the household member has to update if there is a change in the membership of the household.
So I think the flip side to that is Big Brother, 1984. The idea that your movements will be going, your privacy is completely eliminated. That'll be
I think
something that you have
there's
to do.
misinformation maybe. Maybe people are not told really how it will help them.
Okay. That's good. You're talking about access to metadata,
Yeah.
to microdata. Is it microdata?
Microdata.
You looked at some of these clauses about 39 and so forth about confidentiality. How do you think that your recommendations, this is one clause there, about the government statistician 39 and so forth, about the confidentiality of the information.
Okay.
If the metadata the microdata was available, how would that confidentiality be maintained in that sort of an issue?
So let's take an example of household income and expenditure data. So let's say there are 250 households. I'm a user. As an economist, I want to do some econometric analysis. I don't want to know what is the salary of John Usmate. To me, John Usmate on my data set is a number. Yep, I don't need the name of the peasants. So those kind of information can be removed. But I want to know the gender of Honorable Usmate. I want to know because I will do gender analysis whether females are more affected in terms of females are earning more income or less. I want to know the age. I want to know what is the situation with regard to those who are above 55. So you see, to me, the name doesn't matter. So confidentiality can be guaranteed by removing those aspects of the data.
Any more questions? No comments? Yeah, Honorable Koi has one more.
The suggestions that you're making in terms of the way you've put it, in terms of the amendments, it would require a complete digitization of the statistical division of the ministry. Is that correct?
Yes. But
And at the same time being connected to every single ministry that can assist in a digital data sharing.
Yeah. Chair, that's the direction we have to go now. Chair, this is an opportune time. Since you are going over this bill, this is the time. You can say progressively. So
do you believe there should be a clause in there that says that there's a compulsion on each ministry to ensure that
absolutely. I think I've mentioned there somewhere. They all have to harmonize now. All the ministries have to harmonize. They can't operate in silos with regard to this, because this is what will allow sharper policy making by the policy makers. Your good self.
Thank you very much, Dr. Reddy. I believe there are no more comments and questions. So on behalf of the committee and myself, thank you very much for making your submissions. Naka.
Thank you, Chair, and I thank Honorable Usmate for inviting me.
Thank you very much, Naka. Your excuse, sir. Yes. Anyone else wants to make a submission on any bills? Please do come forth. Yes, come. Just before you start, just introduce yourself and if you are making this presentation on a personal capacity or on behalf of an institution. And which bills, sorry, which bills will you be making a submission on? Thank you very much.
Vinaka, good morning. My name is Luke Ulimborotu, and I'm from representing the Mboa Provincial Youth Council, all the way from Boa. Naka, Bolare.
Miambulre Alice Rambukawanga, also from Boa. I'm part of the Boa Urban Youth Network. We are part of the Suva District Council of Social Services under the Fiji Council of Social Services. We'll be speaking on the Bill on the Rights of Indigenous People, Bill number 37 of 2025. And I also wanted to add as a preface that I am a representative to the Indigenous Peoples Advisory Group of the Jeff Assembly. And we've also done a lot of work around Indigenous peoples' rights and movements locally as well as internationally. So we felt very obliged to come and make a submission this morning. Thank you. Honorable members of the Standing Committee on Justice, Law and Human Rights, we welcome the opportunity to provide comments on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples Bill 2025. We strongly support the recognition, protection, and advancement of Indigenous peoples' rights in Fiji. Our submission is therefore not about whether Indigenous rights should be strengthened, but whether this bill is the most effective legal mechanism to achieve that objective. Our primary concern is that the bill does not clearly identify a legislative gap that requires the creation of a new standalone act. Respectfully, the issue should not be whether Fiji needs stronger recognition of Indigenous rights. The question is whether a new umbrella act is the best use of Parliament's time when there are existing laws that contain genuine gaps. The bill seeks to give effect to the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. While UNDRIP is an important international instrument, it was largely developed in response to circumstances where Indigenous peoples were dispossessed of their lands, excluded from governance systems, denied legal recognition, and lacked meaningful participation in decision-making. Fiji's circumstances are fundamentally different. The Indigenous peoples of Fiji are already recognized through law, governance institutions, customary systems, and land tenure arrangements. Indigenous ownership of approximately 87% of land remains protected and is one of the strongest examples of customary tenure recognition globally. Fiji already has several legislations protecting Indigenous interests, including, and I just want to list them out, the Itoke Affairs Act, Itoke Lands Act, Itoke Land Trust Act, Itoke Development Fund Act, and the Itoke Trust Fund Act. And also, to some extent, other legislation that recognizes Indigenous rights, the Environmental Management Act, Fisheries Act, Forest Act, and Climate Change Act, just to name a few. Unlike countries such as Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, Fiji's challenges is not recognition of Indigenous peoples. Rather, it is ensuring that Indigenous communities can meaningfully exercise authority over matters affecting our lands, water, resource, culture, knowledge systems, and development pathways. We would encourage a systematic review of the Mining Act, Rivers and Streams Act, which I believe hasn't been reviewed since 1880, Environment Management Act, Fisheries Act, and emerging areas such as carbon markets, biodiversity credits, and traditional knowledge protection, which I believe to some extent is within the Climate Change Act. These are areas where Indigenous rights, participation, and stewardship can be strengthened in practical and measurable ways. Also, while UNDRIP provides valuable guidance on Indigenous rights, it is important to recognize that it is a declaration rather than a convention or treaty. Just to emphasize that the whole basis of this Bill of Rights is under UNDRIP, and it does not have teeth there. As such, it establishes international standards and aspirations, but does not create binding legal obligations in the same manner as convention that Fiji has already ratified. Fiji is already bound by a number of international agreements that contain provisions directly relevant to Indigenous people, including the Convention on Biological Diversity, which recognizes the importance of traditional knowledge and customary resource management, the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, which governs marine resources and coastal stewardship, the United Nations Framework on the Convention on Climate Change and Paris Agreement, which increasingly recognizes indigenous knowledge and participation in climate action, the Convention on the Rights of the Child, and the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, and various International Labour Organization conventions concerning participation, equality, and social protections. Rather than reproducing the language of UN DRIP through a standalone act, Parliament may wish to assess whether existing legislation adequately implements Fiji's obligations under these binding international agreements and identify specific gaps requiring reform.
Neither the bill nor explanatory nor adequately identifies what rights are currently unprotected, what legislative gaps exist, what remedies indigenous peoples currently lack, or why existing legislation is insufficient. Before introducing the new legislation, a comprehensive review of the existing laws should be undertaken to identify genuine gaps and determine whether targeted amendments would be more effective. In addition, from a policy and legislative design standpoint, we would also note that embedding an action plan within the primary legislation is generally not advisable. It risks constraining future policy development and represents an inefficient use of legislative authority. A more coherent approach would be for the responsible for ministry to develop the overarching policy framework, including any associated action plan, through the standard policy process. Legislation should then be used to provide the necessary legal mandate to the institutions, mechanisms, and functions arising from those policies. A further concern is the bill definition of indigenous peoples as every member of the Aboriginal race indigenous to Fiji. This definition is overly narrow and reduces indigenous identity primarily to ancestry. For indigenous Fijians, identity is not defined solely by race, but through kinship, belonging, and reciprocal relationships grounded in the Vanua and expressed through customary structures such as the Avusa, Matangali, and Toka. These relationships are reflected in recognized systems of identity and affiliation, including the Volani Kaumbula, customary governance institutions, traditional knowledge systems, and collective responsibilities for the stewardship of lands, waters, and resources. It is these interconnected relationships that underpin indigenous self-determination in Fiji. Any legislation relating to indigenous people should therefore recognize the cultural, customary governance, and relational dimensions of indigenous identity rather than relying on a purely racial definition.
Another significant omission is the absence of indigenous responsibilities. In Fiji, rights are inseparable from responsibilities to the Vanua future generations, customary institutions, cultural heritage, and natural resources. The bill adopts a predominantly rights-based approach, but does not adequately reflect indigenous Fijian concepts of stewardship, reciprocity, and collective responsibility, which underpin customary governance systems. While we question the necessity of a standalone Rights of Indigenous Peoples Act, there are several important issues that warrant attention. Number one, free, prior, and informed consent. There is currently no nationally consistent framework governing FPIC. As Fiji expands activities relating to conservation, carbon markets, biodiversity credits, renewable energy, deep sea mining, or just mining, and large-scale development, greater clarity is needed regarding consultation standards, consent processes, and dispute resolution mechanisms. Number two, protection of traditional knowledge and genetic resources. Fiji has already identified access, benefit sharing, and free, prior, and informed consent as national priorities through its commitments under the Convention on Biological Diversity, the Nagoya Protocol, and the National Biodiversity Strategy and Action Plan. Rather than creating a new umbrella Rights of Indigenous Peoples Act, Parliament may wish to prioritize the development and implementation of comprehensive FPIC and ABS frameworks that provide practical protections for indigenous communities, I should say indigenous and local communities. It encompasses everyone, traditional knowledge holders and customary resource owners. Benefit sharing and emerging nature economies. Existing legislation was developed before the emergence of carbon markets, blue carbon initiatives, biodiversity credits, and conservation finance mechanisms. Clear legal frameworks are needed to address community consent, ownership, benefit sharing, transparency, and accountability in these emerging sectors. These are genuine contemporary challenges affecting indigenous self-determination and may be better addressed through targeted legislative review and regulatory reform rather than through a new standalone act. And finally, just our recommendations. We respectfully recommend that the committee undertake a comprehensive review of existing legislation affecting indigenous peoples, including an assessment of Fiji's obligation under relevant international conventions and treaties to identify genuine legal and policy gaps before progressing the bill. Consider targeted amendments to existing legislation rather than a new standalone act where specific gaps relating to indigenous rights, participation, stewardship, and self-determination are identified. Prioritize the development and implementation of comprehensive national frameworks for FPIC and ABS, free, prior, informed consent, and excess benefits sharing, consistent with Fiji's commitment under the Convention on Biological Diversity, the Nagoya Protocol, and the National Biodiversity Strategy and Action Plan. Number 4, review resource governance legislations, including the Mining Act, Rivers and Streams Act, Environment Management Act, and Fisheries Act to ensure indigenous participation, stewardship, consent, and equitable benefit sharing are adequately recognized. And number 5, review the bill's definition of indigenous peoples to ensure it reflects indigenous Fijian concepts of identity, kinship, customary governance, affiliation, and stewardship, including recognized systems such as the Volnikambula, rather than relying solely on a racial definition. We support strengthening the indigenous rights and indigenous self-determination in Fiji. However, the Rights of Indigenous Peoples Bill 2025 does not clearly demonstrate what legal gaps it seeks to address, duplicates aspects of existing legislation, and provides limited practical mechanisms for implementation. The committee should therefore consider whether indigenous self-determination would be better advanced through targeted reform of existing legislation and regulations informed by a comprehensive gap analysis rather than through the creation of a new standalone act. The ultimate objective should not simply be recognition of rights, but the practical strengthening of indigenous authority, participation, stewardship, and decision-making in ways that reflect Fiji's unique legal, cultural, and historical context. Vinaka.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Mukawaga. That's a presentation submission from the Boa Urban Youth. Thank you very much to you two both for your submissions. Any comments or questions, Honorable Members? Yes, Honorable Usumate.
First of all, I want to thank you both for taking the time. You're a very comprehensive assessment of the bill, which is very interesting. Basically, you're saying there's no need for this bill. What we need to do is to get up with the other legislations. The approach obviously in this bill is through the action plan, identify all the things that you've named, and then for the relevant ministry then to execute and progress. That's the way that is done in this bill. So is it your contention that there's no need for the bill, that this is really a policy issue to identify? So some of the bills that you mentioned, for instance, TKIC is already in. It's it. What's TKIC?
FPIC.
Traditional Knowledge Intellectual Capital. That's already in flow. Mining is in flow. So is it your contention that there is no need for this bill, that it should become a policy issue, and that the ministry should then come up with bills to address the issues that you've identified?
Yes, sir.
That's your contention.
Yes. Bottom line.
Yes, Honorable Yundam.
Thank you, Boa Urban, for your presentation. Now, if you think that this bill is not important for the government to consider, and for the future governments, if they don't really care about amending those legislations that you were thinking of, so they don't have a duty, because currently the declaration of the indigenous rights are not enacted as a law. So if any government comes in the future and they don't care about what, like all the kind of legislation you are submitting this morning, because it's not a duty for them whether to oblige to do it or not. So what can you say to that?
Thank you, sir. I had addressed it within our submission. Is the declaration is not a binding document. What is binding are the conventions, and Fiji has already ratified several conventions that are binding that do the exact same thing that is listed out through this bill. The United Nations Convention on Biological Diversity, the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. These already recognize indigenous peoples. The UNCBD already has within it the Nagoya Protocol, FPIC, excess benefit sharing. All of these things Fiji is ratified to. Fiji has already said we are obligated to this, and we will do the work that is needed to uphold being party to these conventions. The idea of strengthening indigenous peoples' rights and self-determination is something I support, and I said right at the very beginning. However, I do not see that this bill would be the most effective mechanism to do that work. What we could do instead, as Honorable Usumate had mentioned, is to look at the existing legislation and regulations and see how they can be strengthened. There are very new concepts that are here now that were not present in the past that needs to be recognized. We're talking about carbon markets, climate financing. They are not recognized yet, but they could be. And even this bill, it does not mention any of these things. So in the way it is written, it could be revised and it could be made clearer. And maybe it needs to have an analysis first of what are the specific gaps to then be captured by this bill. Those are just some of the things. It's not that we're saying we do not care about indigenous people's rights. We do, and we want it to be done right.
You mentioned quite a few of those conventions where indigenous rights have been mentioned, for indeed the law of the sea and so forth. Do you think that while Fiji has ratified those conventions, there's adequate legislation already in place that cements a process towards meeting those rights that are in the conventions that you mentioned that Fiji has already ratified?
No, there's still gaps.
Okay.
There's still gaps. And I just...
Would this action plan then, that's in this bill, be a way of trying to identify where the gaps are and getting the relevant ministry to develop legislation or amend existing legislation in order to plug those gaps?
Yes. An action plan would. And also, we only just received word last night to come and make a submission. So we really tried to scramble and get all of our partners, everyone who's a member of the network, including one who's a lawyer, to also, give input. And one of the things he mentioned was that the way that the bill is written, you do not put action plans in a bill for an act. That it's just not the way that it's done. And so, I also want to share concern on that there may be a better way to draft the bill. I'm not a lawyer. My background's marine science. I'm an environmental conservationist. And so this is just us bringing this to the table for your consideration. Thank you.
Last one.
Yes, Honorable Kwa.
As a person that has connections to Mboa, I'm very proud that you came today and made this presentation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mukawaka and Boa Urban Youth for making your submissions. Thank you very much. You're excused. Naka. Oh, Dr. Rachel, you're here? Yes.
What was my thought when I saw that bill? Which bill?
Honorable Chair, sir, and honorable members, I also wish to acknowledge the viewers who are zooming in or beaming in or watching live for today's public consultations. It is my pleasure on behalf of the team and also the Ministry of Education, the Higher Education Commission, and the Pacifica Communities University to be here this morning for this public consultations to present and also present some amendments and, more importantly, to answer questions there if there are regarding the PCU bill that is currently under consultations. Our meeting 3 weeks ago highlighted some of the key gaps that have been identified. The team actually went back to the drawing board, had a number of meetings, exchange of emails, tried to find and as per questions specifically how do what actually the universities planning to do in terms of shifting from a college to university for the whole of life principles, and how can that be enacted in this bill and later on to become an act. So the team will be here to highlight sirs on what are the key amendments that the team has brought back to present to the committee and, more importantly, to the public that are watching live today. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to Madam Dr. Kenrate. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair, and honourable members of Parliament, as well as honourable members of this standing committee. At the outset, on behalf of our team from PCU who are here with us, we would like to say thank you very much for receiving us at our first consultation, and also for accepting our Manu Folau, our Vice Chancellor, to make the presentation. And I also give his apology. He's currently in Samoa. And would like to thank you for gently accepting, what presented. But the questions that you gave us are very important for us to go back and look at, what needs to strengthen our bill, especially when Honorable Lusumate was raising quite a number of issues that we need to address. Having said that, we thought that this is a partnership, this is a collaboration to make it where we are, and this is a consultation. So when we went back on that day, you would be aware, we were represented by our line ministry, which is the Ministry of Education, and also our channel ministry, which is the higher education. And that's how it works. And so we are not here alone. We are here as a team. We've journeyed together to arrive at this juncture. So we went back to PCU and we spent the whole day just looking at, there were literally 4 questions, but they were very important and critical. And the main one that and she will put up there, it's the name of the council that somehow, because this bill is contextualized here in our nation, and we at the PCU are trying, to leave the name of the university, Pacifica Communities University, therefore our documents, therefore our position, like, thank you, Chair, address me as Madam Tautai, thank you. So we want to leave it, in our document as a way of saying, this is who we are. And because also at the outset, I would like to say we are regional university and we have 20 members. So, that's why we've used a lot of regional names, Fiji names, Kiribati name, Papua New Guinea name, all the countries in the region. It gives an affirmation of who we are. It gives an affirmation of saying, this is not a Western document. If we have been in Parliament with using bill where there are no indigenous or no Pacifica names are there, not even there, we want to make, the first impact to be put there. So having said that, however, we also, because we were once a church institution, Pacific Theological, we want to have respect and we want to contextualize and want to make sure that we're working in harmony with everybody. And so the word council, which is pronounced as the interpretation of that is Vaitele. We know that it's not accepted because, part of that is unacceptable from our friends from the north. And we in Tailevu are okay with it. And so we thought about it, and we said, well, we cannot, because even Honorable Ausumate was having difficulty in pronouncing it on that day. And we have heard too that there are other ministers who have told us to be cautious about use. So we've done that, and so you will see we've changed the interpretation at this juncture to be able to use the council, because it actually means council. It is a Samoan name, which is an open meeting place for people. So we now, for the sake of this bill, so we are going to use the council. So from the 94 use of that word, I won't pronounce it for the sake of our northern friends who are here, especially the chairman. So we have reduced from 94 to only 4. So we still want to use it, because bearing on that, to use it. So, but we're now going to use the council, so to appease everybody. And there's also another important suggestion that was made to us, and that is the member. And we thought this was a very good suggestion by the deputy chair then, and also looking forward, and we know that it is going to grow. It's a regional university, and the interpretation, we used to have member churches, but we've changed that to member, which means the founding member churches who originally established this to be there, listed in the schedule, and any other church and affiliated organization that may be admitted to the members of the church. And we welcome that. And we welcome that coming, so we've put that in. And so those are the interpretations that are in the bill. And the other one is the statutes. Okay, there we were using statutes, but we were kindly advised ordinances, because that would, go on to the policy that we would make. So that we've done all that in the document, and so it will be reflected, as you see, right throughout the document. There are a few other things that we have, we want to highlight that has been put in Part 3, Section 7, is this section establishes the council of the university called the Vaitele. Unless the context otherwise requires, the council shall be used exclusively in all provisions relating to it. So we want that to be right throughout in the bill. So that's why we've cut down that word. We still, with excuse from friends from the north, we still have to use it because of the rationale of what I have said, right? So I hope we'll be pardoned from the north. And also, there is a few other things that we've changed in terms of, I've said that the membership there, members of the university, as you can say, we've changed that, Part 9, to reflect what has been suggested looking forward. So, because it will be a growing university, and we already start with ecumenism, we already have a center of interfaith, we want to open it up. From one school of theology and ecumenism, we now have another 2 new schools, School of Pacifica Philosophy, Education Sciences, and School of Ecology, Resilience, and Climate Change and Leadership. So, and there may be other schools that might happen. So that is looking to the future. And that is, no, so that is embracing our vision, the whole of life vision. Whole of life philosophy embraces that everything that has breath is connected, is related, although differentiated, although different contextualized, but there is a common bond. We come together. Whether they are birds or whether they are, when we upset something in ecology, it affects the whole of life. So that's why we are the only university that is looking at that whole of life. It's not holistic, because holistic has limitations. The whole of life embraces all that. So our ecology, our way of looking, the indigenous way of looking at the climates and how to prevent it, that's all in there. And while I'm at that, let me just say the 2 grounding foundation of this university is the indigenous system and our Judean Christian faith. So we want that to be based on that.
Can I pause you just
Yes.
for a moment? Just to quickly just take you back, if you could go back to where you used the word ordinance.
Ordinance, yeah?
There are two definitions to ordinance. One is it's either biblical or governmental authority.
Yes.
So when you use the word ordinance, it's similar to using the word statute. If I could just impress upon you that the English language is vast. Please just use a word that won't imply governmental authority, or for that matter, I mean, like I said, it only has two things. It's either biblical or governmental authority. So for your purposes, if you could go back to that and say, okay, we'll probably use a word that is easy to handle and it's not going to be interpreted as something like that. Just a tag on that one.
Thank you. That's a very useful comment. But it will depend on the people who are interpreting it, and the way and whatever the content of what it is. But I do.
The actual definition of ordinance is anything done by governmental authority.
Yes. Okay.
That's the difficulty.
Okay. So thank you for that. We will have a look at that. But that's very useful for us. Yes. But yes. Okay. Thank you. So thank you for that. And another important thing that we have put in, so we've done that, the membership, Part 2, Section 5, the power of the university. The university has the following power. Quote the university, this is very important for us as an academic institution, so the self-accrediting status of its academic programs as regulated by the Minister. And I think for any university, and that's why we're looking forward to the bill, to the act, because once we have an act, it gives us the determination to determine our program, our content, and at the moment, we're going through higher education, and so we have to wait sometimes. When we want to offer our program, we have to wait, they register, and they have the committee who scrutinize, and they come back to us. But when we have the act, it will give us, like any other university, that self-accrediting university. Why? Because we have the people, the expertise in their own field who make the program and who know what the content is and what process has to be done through the system of the university. So that's another important part that we wanted highlighting that. And to conduct second one, very critical for any university that we may have not emphasized in the last bill, is the scholarly publications and the research, scientific research, primarily grounded in the vision and the mission of the university. So we, in all our programs and also in the research, we must make sure that it is grounded in our vision and our mission. Okay, Part 2, Section 5, the powers of the university. So we have removed this to include to policy, as has been suggested last time. And I thank you for suggesting that. We also agree, the three parties agree that that has to be included in the policy. Thank you. Part 3, Section 15, Clause 3.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and the Honorable Ministers. So, this is another proposed amendment for Part 3, Section 15, on the duties and obligation of the member of the council. In the last meeting, this is the clause that was recited by Honorable Usomate. And we have to concur that we did not understand it at the time. Therefore, we went back and relooked at this particular clause, and we have reworded it as such, keeping the essence of that particular clause, but rewording it for better understandability for those that might have to read this particular section. So that is how we have amended it. And in your presence, you have the printed documents with track changes of everything that we've changed it from the initial bill, and it has both the original versions and also the the proposed amendment to that particular section. And on the same part, Section 16, Clause 1, when reviewing the Act further, these initial wordings for this particular clause was not clear as well to us, the initial wording, so we have reworded, and with an assistance of the Ministry of Education, with the current education bill that is currently under review, to have something similar. So this is the new wordings of this particular clause. And Honorable Chair, that is the final amendments that we have on the particular bill.
Thank you very much, Chair and honorable members. Thank you for all the suggestions that were made now. And since there are no more questions, we hope there's no more questions. And may I just, on behalf of the Director of the Higher Education and the Minister of Education who's not here, and the team who
So we'll just
The mic is off, Dr.
your mic is off, Dr. Kenrat.
And may I just thank you,
Nawalew.
most sincerely, Chair, you were not here. So thank you for accepting us in our term, and for all of you, we hope that our bill and it becomes an act soon when you go back to Parliament.
Nawalew, thank you very much, Dr. Kenrat, and we take note of your suggestions. There are only two questions from the committee. One is from the Honorable Smate, will be followed by Honorable Koya.
I just want to check back in Dr. Kenrati and Dr. Nesele and the staff. When the last time that we had looked at Section 5.1a, the university has the following powers to institute professorships. So you still use that word institute? Is that?
Yes.
Okay.
Is there a better word?
No, I'm not an academic person, so I'm just asking the experts. Because you got two doctors there.
Honorable Koya, you have a question?
Thank you, Chair. Mine's a suggestion to my earlier remark about using the word ordinances. Why don't we use an indigenous word? That is the equivalent of, and doesn't mean that it's by governmental authority or biblical, for that matter. Because anytime somebody uses the word ordinance, I think of something biblical or Quranic or to do with government authority. So use an indigenous word. Yeah?
Thank you very much. That's a very, very good suggestion, and it helps us to move forward with using our language.
So it works in all the languages used in the Pacific.
Chair, I knew he was going to say that. So
The closest one I can think of in Itoke, it's Lao, right? Yeah, Lao.
What?
What's the Itoke word for law?
Lawa?
Yeah, Lao.
No, like
Lawa?
Laws, yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Laws also mean government laws.
Law also means government law. As soon as you say law to any street, they means government.
It must be. We've got a million words.
Okay.
Nawalew, Dr.
But
Kenrat.
I really appreciate that, Honorable Minister. That's really.
Nawalew, Dr. Kenrat, and Dr. Elim Nawalew, Sarah. Thank you. Yes. Mike, please come. So just as protocol, sir, just introduce yourself and who you're representing, and you can go ahead with your submission. Yes, you excuse Dr. Kenrat Binak.
Sarmetiti is my name. I'm from Essaouira. I was hoping I'll follow on from the Mbua proposal, because Essau and Mbua were once very, very closely related before we were ceded to Great Britain. Joined the civil service in 1978, finished in 2015. Served in quite a spectrum of ministries and departments. I'll just name five. I was a DO Navo 90 to 94. Before that, I was official secretary to Ratupenia straight after the coup, first coup, when John was still at USP. From there, DO Navo. After Navo, I came up to Public Service Commission, promoted to Principal Admin Officer. From PSC, then to Prime Minister's Office. I think it's an opportune time to correct my career. A lot of people think that I was a soldier. I started in 78 in the Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries and Forests, where the bus stand is now situated. 78, 79, 80, 81, I was transferred to the Ministry of Information in April. I resigned in August to join the army under TOSB, T-O-S-B, Territorial Officer Selection Board. Malrawan Roka, Chesoni Vitsamavulu, Lemeki Vuetaki, what 18 of us that went in, finished in March the year after, 1982, came back to government. So I hope with this going live, people now know that I spent more time in government than in the army. I'm really thankful to the page that John, before I continue with this, just a few issues that I want to raise. But before that, 20th October last year, I was given this traditional post, traditional title of Turania Buzasawa. So when I saw John's Honorable Usamate's page yesterday, then I saw a number there. So I rang the number, and it was a parliamentary support team that gave me the invitation to come today. And it was public consultation. I'm really thankful. Because on the 28th of May, just 2 weeks or 3 weeks ago, we, the 8 Turaniabusas in Nadula and Asawa, we signed a waiver of Ngolingoli for a 500 million US 8-star hotel for one and only from Dubai. In Feb, there were consultations between provincial office in Ba, Lens, and our people from the Asawas, and I was taking them because they were consulting with Turani Koros and some village elders, and I said, no, you're wrong. You need to consult with us. So I'm thankful to one and only. They paid for Hotel Tano over 2 days, and we had a meeting. We had a presentation from the partners, Kesna from Dubai and their local partners, including BSP Life, and I was so fascinated. And it's the first time I signed my name on an obligatory requirement under law to waive the Ngolingoli rights. It echoes always in my mind when I do that now when I left government and I assumed the responsibility of Turaniabusa, what 1 Kings 21:3 wrote. God forbid that I give you the inheritance of my forefathers. A young peasant, Naboth, against King Ahab. So it's a similar scenario. We, the peasant, we, the people, are confronting government today on what we feel are inheritance of the Fijian people. I may sound racial, but that is fact. I just have a few questions. I just got a copy of this, Honorable Member Binawaliukai, just before we started this consultation. But I heard about it in January while meeting with our TLTB guys in Nandi of Kuma. So I'm really thankful that there is this opportunity to come and sit and discuss this bill with you, because it is a bill that I can say quite categorically that will affect Asawa more than any other part of this country. We've had 2 shots of Blue Lagoon in Asawa, 1949 and 1980. 1980 is starring Brooke Shields. We've had 3 movies, a Survivor series short, the French are wanting to come back next year. We've had US and the French shooting their Survivor series in the Asawas. And as I said, on the 28th of May, I signed one of the 8 signatories to Ranyabusa Kitolewalu to waive the fishing rights application so that one and only can go ahead with a $500 million project, 8-star. And I'm just amazed. And I'm really thankful. We're just going through reading this bill a few minutes ago. I just have a few questions. I haven't had time to actually go through them page by page and then write down something that I can present with you today. But looking at the 6 of you, you're all gentlemen in your own right. I know that you can have time to come to the Asawas as part of this consultation process. And let me, on behalf of the Tuyasawa and Tuinrola, invite you to come over. Come and swim in one of our sandy beaches or swim in the Blue Lagoon, the caves. Don't worry, we'll take care of you after that. Just one question on the bill, the name of the bill. It says, for an act to provide for the transfer of proprietorship ownership of marine areas used for commercial purposes to the customary owners. My question is, when was this right given to government? What time was it given to government? That you are thinking in this particular act, it must be returned to the indigenous rights owners. Can you answer that? Is there anything on paper that it was given to the state and now the very, very kind and chiefly intentions of returning it to the landowners or the fishing rights owners? When was this right given to the state?
If I could just assist you, this issue emanates from the colonial times, from the deed of cession time. And the questions that, there are many questions that still need to be asked. Before you even get to that, when you say that the definitions of all of this also need to be very correctly put before any of this is done. Because when you say ngolingoli, it means fishing right. It didn't refer to ownership of what's below the sea. And the reason why I say that is because this is what transpired many, many moons ago when it was actually done in the colonial times, when it was ceded across to Great Britain. But there is, I urge you to go and read some of the stuff. The late Kornia Simbale also gave an opinion to the GCC many moons ago with respect to how it can be or whether it can be done, etc., all that kind of stuff. But all of this emanates from that. So this bill, before I say anything else, my question to you would be, it needs to go around, especially the Yasawa, so that it can be explained properly and how it can be done, or whether it can be done or can't be done, or what is the format that needs to be used.
Thank you.
You know, I'm very familiar with the project that you're talking about. I think you know. So my point is, when you ask the question, when was this done? It's from the colonial times.
Thanks.
So what is being done now is a question that was raised many years ago at the GCC. And at that time, Ratumara, the late Ratumara, and also the late Kornia Simbale had given an opinion to the GCC. I urge you to go and read it. It will give you shed some light on where it comes from. But at that time, I think the advice was different, given by Mr. Mbale to the GCC.
Thanks, Honourable Member. My second question is, has any of you members of Parliament, the current members and the previous one, have had a look at the instruments of independence that was handed over from His Majesty now King Charles to Ratumara, the late Ratumara? Have you ever had a look at that instruments of independence? Have you seen the instruments of independence? Do you know where it is right now? I must ask you, please, try to look for the instruments of independence. Even I don't know. I was in the PM's office for almost a decade. And these are the questions we normally ask. Because these are the documents of which you're referring to, which gave the powers to the state to control all this. I like the idea of it being returned to the customary fishing owners. My second question is, you are replacing the surfing decree from a very specific issue of surfing to a more broader issue of commercial use. But I don't see any definition in A to Z of those areas. I'm worried about oil because the Blywater Basin sits in Angolingoli. Can you put that into the bill? These are the commercial areas that this bill will cover. Just last week, I was thankful to our colleagues from the Ra province asking government to go to do exploration of oil. So the thing is, if you need to go and be specific in this commercial use, not to include other areas like mining, like oil, because you can camouflage other areas by using names that are more or less general in nature. That's my second observation. But I must say that I'm thankful to you for this, after reading the few pages that I've gone through. That's my second question. If you could be clear, because you've come from surfing decree, which is a very, very specific issue, to commercial use. General, can you put A to Z or say 10 bullet points? What are these commercial use? And then you actually put them into the regulations that the minister has powers to control.
You've seen the definitions that are in the interpretation part of the
I've
bill.
seen, yeah.
There's an interpretation for commercial marine area,
Right.
but as you said, it does not specify
Used for
what we mean
commercial
by
purposes, yeah.
what we mean for commercial purposes, and there's also a commercial tourism activity,
Right.
which is the third one. That is currently that's what's in this bill. If you have any recommendations on that, then you can make those recommendations. On the
Well,
things
I'm
that
making
you
the recommendation now. Mining and oil needs to be separately dealt with in the relevant act, whatever. They were reviewing the actual mining act about 2 months ago. I was asked by the director, MRD, if I could present myself, but I was busy. I was in the village. What I'm just saying is there are other areas that needs to be very, very specific in terms of what tech needs to cater for them in terms of utilization, extraction, exploration, rather than commercial use. Thank you, Mr. Usamati. I've read that. That's just my second observation. And the third one is that I'm thankful that you've said yes to come to the Asawas, because I would like to do a lot of things in the Asawas. One is the use of the trademark of the name Asawa. I've sought legal advice that I can do that. I've talked with the AG. He's waiting for my application. The intellectual property bill, I understand it was in the previous government and was sitting on the table of the former AG. Why don't you get that? So that the use of names that are sacred to us Fijians can be put into law for people that use them. I sought the services of a legal officer 3 months ago. Halfway through the conversation, I said, what school you went to? I said, I also went to Morris Brothers. I was more junior than you, sir. Then he told me, there's no intellectual property act bill right now. It was drafted by the previous government, sitting with the former AG's office. The only thing you can do now, sir, is to register the trademark that you own, the trademark of the word Esawa, because I'm the Turanganyabusa Esawa. So, AG is from Nairai. Nairai and Esawa are traditionally very, very close, even though sometimes the Nairai people want to push our house. So he's waiting for my application. But this other thing I'm saying is, we are going around at various legal options that are available to us, and they are not covered in such things. But I will conclude by saying thank you, Mr. Usamate, for your page yesterday that gave me the impetus to come today. I thank you so much. And I want to thank you in advance too for agreeing to come to the Asawas. From Asawirara, me others are a viewer. And I will be talking to the Asawan people next week. I'll be touring the Asawas too next week to sign the deed of trust for the Ngolingoli. 32 Matangalis in Nadula and Asawa, with the compliments of one and only, so that we can have the legal teeth to charge for this and that for those that use Ngolingoli. In Asawa.
Oh, Honorable Sumati has a question.
The TKIC bill, according to the Assistant Minister, is already with AG. So that includes traditional knowledge, intellectual capital. But now I think all you Asawans, what you have to do, leave Mba and become part of the Mbo province.
Well, it's the demarcation of provinces came very, 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 very late. We are all one family. Okay.
Navalev, thank you very much, Mr. Titeri, for your submission. Navalev, you excuse, sir. Naka. Naka.
Malombula semi ranrabura solonga mai campa wabinaka na matani ko sana boss tumdanga di bobici wabinaka na harani mbasi kamay na matani ngol sa chumelo tok simla kau reida nai bola mata ni bosi chiko na kango sebati kau indo na wasa register ta kana nunggu kambani na matani wai na dani to totok matani wai seafood house ina Ronondo Katolu 2023 me bagani bakin dua chunga 2024 sa expital
Ka e window na former General Secretary ni Lautoka Fishermen Association o akere wi chavani na market pa ndam tasa na sa tua kina nongo toka ndende sa mai wading o Ocean Income. Ka usa manibo buia tale na nongo laisi ningo me di tale na mbaki ngo na bula saud. Ka somati ko wada dai rosulu ka manondol na be bula tolu kina tax ke vakai na maniada me ba kakina. Ko bia ko te tiko na ngangandi tiko bia mo ngole ke na ingoli berto na tinangu mo na rasi ko yang sa na ngangandi ngau ko te chumena matakani ko se ko na commercial ko ti na nababat do ambita dagi tingori the use of marine areas 2025 wambote ni na ngol chana tango wa bibi wana kango usumati na sana mai na underwater breeding apparatus me bakana taro e tiko se na bana somi taro tiko me bakani wa kitua sambo su chigar tu na leiba ina ngono sa secretary chikin me Lautoka na 2015 ona sa tiga tu kitu recognize tekin na Lautoka Fishermen Association na wa mani kere nerto baskan arto angolen ki de tikino inia mai Lautoka sangai tiko kina na ruana lawang ko na recreation kina commercial sarto ngai imbito chikorto ni kito duro chiko ina fisheries act kito me kito chiko na recreation sanga meni adra vitala nona singa sanga meni da wuchi chiko arto tu chiko na kai pala no those guys are commercial divers they have to be switched to the commercial diving sanga to the wuto okay, we have to go back to Suva, we'll have the meeting and we have to come back to you guys. Ia, may nangone me adho me ke me sama ni tostunga me adho me nangonongo reality o irango they still run away from the fisheries to do diving in scuba apparatus. Ia, me baka ungai re daka bakino ia musanga me ke me tupani na me songo so we can do things in a legal way me ke me pakadora. We go along for the exemption license. Está stimulated under the Fisheries Act, Cap 15817 in 1997. Kaya menado panangonongo kilani sa senga chiko ni matata chiko bikitu sa ada tungana itu feedback dia sali blamati. Ia keme me abang mude chiko menangana ni rapais ta kamena labor. We get all the satisfy certificate, make me buying attack with the instructors, dive master, with the advance and above, make me buying attack na tango. Kaya na bulong to make na mataka ni kuwa, na nongo may kireti ko as a registered company, na dabo is solikin na by Walter Smith doing coral and small fish, unloading his scuba tank in the front of the fisheries wharf in Lautoka. And why can't we? Even myself as registered matani wa seafood harvest. Ana ngangante nga utiko kina na matani ko na kango samati ubi may clarify tanga kina laway tiko may na 2006 may na labor kapag kina na marine act na cap 158 1997 si nandun betani ndon na kaya tiko ko ewa maningole pa na 2000 may ndon na nungulay siya ni estamba nga na matani tu and I get it. Wa siya ni muri atale na ngoni sala mela ko bi ngoli wa torgin me so irarabi i rif awa mani muri endo ngon sala be ni ado me endo ni tukutu ko ni ngoli na laisi di tungan matantu awa mani la ko daga be fisheries officer to ko ki ngoni sala muria ni sa sta mangango go to the commissioner la ko tala me you get the license ya ko ya ko no machuki na ke saroya na ngade tiko bi mo ko tanawanga ilau siang wala ngabi au birana ka ko me ngea bena ka ko me bulanga na muka o la kemba wira ke vengo ke rende lai buki na ngoni sala ni oto te taki sei ko mbangana ke na liebu na matakani ko amen
na wale usar tabata do evento no taro to ba no turanga
sini torara amdo kampanye da badam dobalat ndo nunika sendo nulase se dam dobalat
siang ngo sanga itiga bu register ta ke usanga sambe ni itiga bu saranga wa sa register ta go china 2023 in kabani bula me expire tale na 2024 au samba di renew ta betani ni bai vonga chiko ke na marine ni eu wa ngata chuna scuba breeding apparatus
bina ka tornga betalanga ni oti e mata lawai ko redanga ni ke ndoji ko mu ngoli Kendo be apply teki na me vanga taki nen doan business. Ko sa ne rende ko apply teki na mungoli me sa omundo. Me sa wili me omundo ngoli ndo ke vala tamu vanga taki nen business. Mai inaki ni lawi.
Oi, malo.
Ona kanto mamadal tachu torge vital ngakin.
Oi, malo, malo.
Na bale uto. Tongi lungkiri tani ngor nyotina tu madalang wa. Naka. Does anyone else wants to make a submission? Please do come forth. It was about BT in English up to you. Mai, tinggal mai. Mai. Naka. Iya, limbula.
Ni ndombula binana turanga. Au nada go nume turani dolo. Au ngole saramai na vono lubuni. Me orau. Me bakanga ni ume ronga tunga sona itutu nga membalata na itutu ndo ndame toki neni kua. Olubuni nromutu. Ni oko e ndo kadivitu na keri tutu kuni kimisimbula usamba kivitsanga bukalimango. Kwa na abutu. Nda wataronga na abutu kidi, ke wataronga wichi. Wailu boni. O balau, kwa na ikawono ni anu o balau ibichi. Nonda lako mai na early settlers, uri na missionary, uri na traders, uri keda sarango, uri na Free Nation, erambichi ngau, kali buta ke biwa balau. Erambuti ibu setiau. Ni ertumbuchi tebuni, ertumbuchi kandavu, ertu sini lau sari pono liu. Video wala ngana minichi no ngole mai obalau teliu. Me bakanin sa samai kilachungo, samai uchi mai obalau sa ndeo mai bitiliu. Na taro chiku wae obalau. Ngona kau vea matata churi kua. Ni rangai ado mai obalau, sangai mai soliki no biti Pertania. Na taro chiku, no ngona sa soliki no berin solo biti Pertania, rapulita ina kelawoni for 3 pounds per head. Geroki ni 5,695 pounds ko tau butekina na matin tukon tu vital no tachungo. Yongo e vidi chiku mai na matin tu koloni ngom. Vidi chiku mai kina ngona no tu matin tu. Ebi na no tu na kebichi. Non tu batu lewa. Tu sambuita mai na 5 walu bichon ko ba. Na taro e kauchiku mai na butu ni kua. Sebe na bono e tu samai redango na feedback ke de mai na vida batana nrau na baki sauti me do mai ni kua. Sini simple. E ndaredanga anda kila na kasado. Ni sa dala mai ndona kana patula mai na mateninguna. Sana tegu me dala mai sa baka lebu takina dala. Kong ndake me tukuna chungo na drugs na tapos chungo senga. Tapan okenda ndala chungo na itoku ibichi. Dunga na umatamata. Dunga na kalueng garaba. Dunga na onda umangele asini wasusei. Ndo urunga tabi hanturan. Au chungo do tu wasusei nangele. Na kena mai au taro ongo betu no ngapa matata. Nomundo ngele satu wasusei. Ngelo reibio na eumula. Ia na kalau isuli bikin tu na tu bata. Ni to chungo. Resuli ngabiau. Ia na kalau ikilau ko ya, na kakon do menun tu kedi. Na umata bichi. Ngona na wasi ngona ko ya do mai na ngonongo sat ya do mekina na non dei to bayango. Da vivala, da vikaseti, da vivutaki, da kodo na kena sa wasusi na nantangeli. Nangono mai wasusi kina nantangeli. Sa ado mai nanguna. Mesa mai watungo ni varoni non to wasusi. Sa ado tuki nango, non da langango na ituki. Nanguna salenga kina nei toki. Berarti ninduanga na umatamatangwa. Asulenga na kalua. Ke baka tukila bina kana itoki ni gua. Asulenga bikin tune. Gelengo menantu. Ke aseni waswesi. Ke asenga ni pango. Ke aseni putu mai na tobo ni mbula. Sara tukin nangongo. Sama yavu kinango. Me tumuria nangoni salango. Kue na lawan ni koloni. Na lawan ni koloni go baka tombo itu takasara. Chico na kani vanjini. Baka tombo itu takasara nga. Na sistem bula, koram bula kina nandangkasi. Koram may bola kina mera bande otaka. May bola. Ni tamata butu-butu na kay bici. Ni tamat dukan tamata. Chico may lawon ni kani vanjini. Lako may na kene tao may na buno obalaw. Kung naturang ang may tawana, na bumay, obalaw. Kung ang may tiki, ito na patu. Tiki o kwendo na patu malaw, may lumani bunong ko. Siya lalan buno. Kung ang ide uto ko na patuan. Na patung ko, kiminto kilabi na kanangon kimsimbula may kinabangon. Siya nga nindo na kay renturi. Kimintuli rawang akin na may kimina eril may kay nadana tuwa patumalaw. Yan na kaya diyo chugidaki. Nabosa ni kalu. May lobo ni may nabosa. Doon ako may nabosa nadana patumalaw. Nasa no nabosa nadana nabosa. Nabosa ko itikundel ni patuan. Siko na bosa ni kalu. Kaya tukuni singo ni ira tamatamutu na nantatungkasi. Do bosa ta natura do tamitikin ko. E bolai baka bosa me baka dota ki baka bosa. Me bolai tukuni ni tamata beditu na wakendari tuki. Santa rota mai no mani vida patan tamata. Nandina endrende menda bangara. Nandina endrende menda reda. Nandina dende menda rawata. Engande bikina na yalo tambu ni kalu. Na yalo tambu na yalo ngani kalu. E tukuni koe batek koe na kalu. Nyo koe na buni kandi nan dondonga. Ni baka sangrai nan dinan dondonu kene sabsaba baka sangrai tiung gobiti. Dondono menda. Bangara. Si koe na yalo tambu ni kalu. Si koe me thuru ki lo manda. Tukuna mai ki lo manda. Si koe na kamen dondonu menda takawala ituki. Ta missing link e chungo na nantutupu nubici. Na kena ali. Nang rabi kalu yalo. Na kalungo e kalu yalo. E sini kalu yalo. Kento sala ko chungo. Nantu sistem nimbulango. Metu sanggara chungo na kalungo. Na buku ni kato rei de matanda tu. Iro oda benaju. Au betu kune chungo. Doan na ulu ni bono. Kondo tukun tumongo lobo ni ana bono anganga. Nindo woso tanatura. O kenda saranga na kaiwi. Anda ati kume lobo ni. Ke bakando sini kilani kuwa. Do tuntu da lobo ni wares. Mountain wares. Niko ndona rei ke dengo 7 square mile crater. La loma ni bonongo. O ko chuo na bottom of the crater. Old volcanic crater. Mongai baka samataka. Na vi ulu ni bonua. Kina vinde ngakilo. Kina vinde lana ulu ni bonua kede mona. Era boleh kede tu kina nebu. Kede sar tuina bisi bicingo. O rewa tumekina. O matu mekina. O nandi tumekina. Vivo no kede o bicingo. Er tumekina. Zapa matai. E buni kena lorai me wakatakile na bonongo. Ye chugo me loboni kwendo tukuntu na kornivalu. Korlevu. O korlevu ngo kilas pinaka chugo me tambanga unangona me dava me ni kua. Ni chugo me korlevu endo na vatu.
Ruelanga nungu taro turanga tau. Kena matai. Na lau vatu rida voiko vea bosa kina. Kena karua. Na dau saramanda na utu ni kau ni vetu kuna tiko.
O bina sarbale bona kaku. Na utu tu ni kau ve tu na chiko. Marta ninda dalata chiko na itubutu bakalu. Sikua na nona kenda sa mai tungu sa mai sese na wakabubuli. Wakayalo, wakayango. Ni o kenda induanga na kaluenda ngarawa. Sa mai tungu sa bini na kaluenda ngarawa. Bini ni wakabubuli. Dondo menda fokus ngai na duanga na wakabubuli o kenda ni tuki. Duanga na kaluenda ngarawa. Merani tiwa keda ngaki na kua ratak mai ira na matua. Ara tiwa mai na viu vale mera kai vande o taka mai na non rei wakabuli mera kila uira na lubenra na makumbunra na vika kede kuenda kila bina kasatuang ko sindu e babuli kina. Au kila non kumbula take mai ara do ure remantanga uira na tumu me duri tumba indua na lubenra ni sambuketi tumba. Ona indoni babuli wakalu. Kua na puni nungu tukuna chingua na kang baleta na kang baleta korlevu. No korlevu e chikumikina na kornivalu. E chikumikina ito na vatu. Na vatu ngu e randong butuka na nima mingkasi. Na nantatungkasi. Ngai lutu mai na kambu. Ngai kambu kete pandu na ulu ni vonua. Ni to rosa chungu. Na taro chungu. E rawa dava me lutu mai na kambu ni rawato kai chungu. O irtuna tua kanta tu. Orto na tukanda, era tamata mutu. E rawa dava me lutu mai na kambu. Na buni nungu kachungu, goe pa lutu yang anak lu, na nature. Na buni nungu betaronga chungu, ngono kumboleki na nambu, na bitarongu bono. E rawa dava, mera bolana kai walang, ni o kendara kai tamatan rabun ruwa, tamatan sangani, ngai mi bolai berbosa. Da sama kila tu niku ni kenda sapa kai mai butu lagi tu membedi tu nan tutu ba wono nan tutu ba kai bici sama kini karua di kai adamu di sa senga tunggu nan tutu bici enda tukuna chigo ni nda tau kena nangel na bonongo nona mai didi chungo na lawani koloni mai na ngona me domingo si sanga bando ni roni da kota listela mai ado mai na ngona ni tuwa kai koya sanga ni mbulindo na tuwichi me baka me rani okachi me na bonongo ninda nonda na kai wichi
Rona ka ni waturutiko do menda lotu kena kro me mbulindo na tuwichi
bilundo na tuwichi me nonda rawa me nonda na ka ngoi sini baka tuin nonda tundo na ka me sachuko na nonra lewa oir na
endo ni na numa me satu wichi
na ka o vetu na chungo bikimni e simple sarani bina kachimi kile na tuwichi to ka di bina ra la ko na vira sana na via sana ke na basana chinika ba tukuni vira oira rabe mbole na tuwichi mer tukuna mai te wono te wukina oira wono te wumi kinon rambula kenon sama turanga chuko Dorong tapi nasa turango. Kemundo turang, eu tahu benua. Unang ngole mo eu. Ngona ndekila bina kenda na ituki, ndekila ngani turang mai bona kelu. Dorong tapi nasa chuko. Unang ngole mo eu, unge kobe na mundo itu baturang. Au saran kobe na mundo itu baturang, au sar kobe irna mundo tamatan dongara kemundo. Dona kau sindan ko bebe kemdo. Na ilumu alumu chike mendo kina na kalu. Mondo turanga na bono ndo inditigo mekina. Gonda kilabina kan da bambo to kenda ni tuki. Na sindan ko tani mai wana tamata be kemdo. Aura ni ko be na katodo. Dona kau sindan ko be kemdo. Sekwa na ilumu ko sile na kalu be kemdo mondo turanga na bono. Turanga bale na bono ditigo kina. Ngona bimbi ni kau betu ni bono. Na nonda sa santa be kutanga me naturang amenda pikta ngame de sengani vaka raita ka wana kalu so dingi ne tura ngoi so turang tu menda tarong manda era kuta ke ngame non turang ko to mortu tambani vita robo non turang to sambulia me ngone ni kucina tunguri ngoni kolon to kota mai dambe ramo irna mai bina kata mera Mera mola ni tu baturang kena mera mai tu na pamatalta kena bono te umikina kena bono ramai tava kina kor mai turanga tuni kua si ke so era sangan turanga tu sa mai torbir ni tu baturang. Gua na buni no gube posa chungo. Na ngor me ke me dak ngane TV gori. Randi pamatalta gir. Ni uchi ni pamatal ona sabs pasar tua. Kili binak satua. Kue kila kue sek. Gua na kue dana kila o de TV kue kila na bono te umikina betiu metu na batara kere vanjinjin. Ini ndala ko lebuka. Inde be basar sar te kirna sarvanua. Endana la ko na historical site. Mendonu na nanda ipaka matala. Nanda itala no vira. Wakatana ki na wira tu na turang or tulang minggu. Ke tu sabe pamatal te tu me tu tigu no mai na pamatal me tiu batara kere vanjinjin.
Naka.
Misa to roju. Ngona na ke matata kina o dina tuibici.
Sana kere ko to mo sa tinya na no muni bosa.
Usa chine sana.
Sa ko so muri ko.
Ya usana chine to ngani kua. Ko me gango no bosto ki akina. Me kawandu kalunga chion tura.
Na valeu. Dona batataro.
Batataro matanggali. Ninda mi toman.
Ninda toman dona
taro. Batataro.
Dona matanggali.
Na matanggali binakabali na ibang madal rongo binak. Sa rongo binak na muni ibang madal. Ruas kana ka biya tarong. Ruas kana lawa patutu kaya nanum sa tiwa na mata committee ngome ka sa tiwa mai. Sa kwendua na non tanto na kawitu kay. Ito na kaya bene vital nongori. Ito dono na matatabi kenda me rani pa lauta kaya non tanto na kawitu kay. Kono kaya na lawa utara sa tiwa ngoy lingango. Na kaya na lorai se me reida na matin tu era na value taki ser na bingarabi may muri na kaya na tokai kaya na marroi na bika me balat saranga na bika ni batal no tati na matabi na ni kuha ni toko na sa katiyo na lawa tutunggo me kito na reida me kito na raw ni vital no tak na matabi na ni kuha na kaya ni matay kaya ni karuwa batat kaya na way ngoli kwa sa ngaya na buna kau kila di buna ko teratal ti ngamay no muni sabisa na matabi na ni kuha robi tutu bat sa katiyo kaya di baka ni sa toko na men ni sa
toko na saranga waliu.
Binaka sa wali. Binaka.
Nawali sa tulang tao.
Naka.
Natali. Oh, thank you. Naka.
Okay, Bula Binaka.
Bula Binaka.
Emosi Silikiwai, also known as Pemo. I have been in business since 1984. I used to be a civil servant for 4 years, and the government, the last government, the Fiji First government, they asked me to take the, what they call it, the charter.
Sorry, just before you proceed, Mr. Wans, can you just highlight to the committee what bill do you want to speak on?
Generally, I hope to put the dots in there,
like which?
And you connect the dots. You're smart enough. Like I said, I've participated four times, although I failed in the general election. As a businessman, I'm looking at it from a perspective of a businessman. And like I said, I also was a civil servant. Now, we're talking about changing the constitution. And in the meantime, there is a lot of confusion. When I take the charter to Numbawalu, to other places, Raki, and I told the people with the civil servant with one condition, on my terms, if I have to, because I used to work with all these big companies, promoting the big companies, and so they asked me to promote the charter to the people. I told them, okay, on one condition, on my terms. What do you mean? I don't want you fellows to speak. Let me present the charter to the people. After presenting the charter to the people and finding out what they were saying, I came up with something. When the Constitution Committee with Dr. Nandan, Ashgai, they came over to Laimi, I presented to them, and I told them our problem lies in the economy. The way the economy is being structured, you have to change the way the Constitution, and in the Constitution, if you look into the pocket Constitution, 142, 144, I believe, 1442. This is what it says. There may be a law made to control, or whatever, the words in there, to control the annual budget in a year. In the meantime, what is happening ever since 1970, when a project is going, they always come back into Parliament if there is a shot in there. But if you kept the expenses into such a stage where you put the formula, this is biblical, the formula, 50% of the income, we always call it the balanced budget. In the meantime, the government is working on a 3 billion income from the government and 4 billion expenditures. There is a 1 billion difference in there, which we call the deficit. And that deficit, actually, the burdens will be felt by the people, the grassroots people. But if you make it a law that whoever comes into power, Labour or NFP or whatever party comes into power, the structure got to be 50% got to be for operation cost. All the details from the president down to all the civil servants, they have to structure themselves to 50% of the income, and 20% the capital expenditures. Then 30% you put it on reserve. With the reserve, the micro and the macro enterprise, they source it from there. You give them on a certain basis where the interest is a little bit lower or time basis, but you keep the expenses controlled by the parliament that only 50% of the income, no more kere. We've been doing that ever since 1970. If you look into the record of the parliament, the debt actually accumulates from 1970 to 74, there was start growing. And up till now, it's uncontrollable. Simply because there is no law to cap the expenses. That is the right word, I think, the cap. In the meantime, anybody who comes in with emotion and a good, what do you call it, ulumbale, give a good story, you start looking for another. Okay, that's an economy. But in the Constitution, this is what I believe. We have to go back to the basics. Somebody was asking, where is the 1970 Constitution? If you can't find it in Fiji, then most probably we have to ask Prince Charles, where's the copy? 1874 to 1970, there's about something like 100 and so many years. But the 1970 Constitution only lives for 17 years. And from 1970 to 1993, how many years in there? The time has been very short at all time. It doesn't give us enough time to analyze. I believe this Constitution, there are some very good parts in the Constitution.
Sir, have you made any submission to the Constitutional Review Commission?
What is this?
This is not a Constitutional Review Commission.
Then what is it?
The Standing Committee on Justice, Law and Human Rights.
I'm very sorry. I'm wasting my time already.
Thank you very much for realizing that.
No, because I got the wrong impression from, there was somebody who was saying that today will be the submission day.
On 5 bills, 5 laws.
On 5 laws.
Yeah. It's
where's the CRC?
in Rewa.
You can check with the secretariat, they'll let you know.
No, anyway, but I think I'm already in here.
Yeah.
You connect the dots.
Yes.
I've already given you some pegs.
Malo. Thank you very much, Mr. Mosi, for your time. Naka. Mike. Yeah. Yes. Yes, sabi nakasamber ni. Before we proceed, please condense yourself to the bills. If you have something to speak on the bills, if you do not have anything to speak on the bills, Let that, when we suspend, then you can raise other matters. Navale, we have the floor, sir.
Na valeu. Dumbula vina kana committee. O sia buti kalulu ngango. Na tikino na loto. Na sano teleu. O mata tiwani tikino na loto. O pavini vina kani ni varu takin dona ngona. Mai rongo dina ndo mikima mina luni bonma. Me mbaleta na dondonu ni koitoki. Au vivaritaka na ngunongo na lenga saya do tuvikima. Ndona ngona ni mosi, ndona ngona ni tang. Na rarao sampai katu na koituki na ngona. Wapa ni benaka. Ni roni kawe na kalu. Wapa katu ndona ngona. Pana matentu. Me mai rongo di tala na ndomi kimami. Na daba na nima mina numa. Me mbalata na nima min dondonu ke na nima min ngala. Ve kemundo na turang. Na lenga ya tu bikimami. Sa tumbu da ke chukuma ne wili ni koitoki. Na kame kimami baga yoki na kwa sule bikimami na kalu. Sa lele itu. Na nima mingele wata ke nima mingulubul. Unanuma ke baka meroni nei kawitaki. Ni se koe ngango ni buruburi ni mamimbula. E baru utaka na kalu wikima. E tuna ni mamingele, watakina ni mamingulugul. Ia, kani rarao na ngongo. Indoni waselebu ningele tu wikima mingo e tuwa na linga ni matentu. Ningulinguli talenga e tuwa na linga ni matentu ya na ngongo. Kubombo te ya indona chikina, indona menda rida manda. Me bakali suitale manda vera na itu kiningele ka itu kiningulinguli. Na non rangele pati kina non rangulinguli. Me rani wali na lenga rasa sotaba tiku. Panangau na sarangango. Saruta me ravangara na drugs na ngani. Saruta me rangoleba na ngoni sala ni mbasulawam. Me ravawata maikina na yau. Balete ko sarani buru-buru non riau. E siang ni tubera kenawa. Wapa ni vinaka ni lesu mena matentu. Kau e mai. E na lenga sotabi ki mamitiku. Me pakanta tuma indambe tuiki na siang ni kwa. Bilioni baka bilioni e tungu. Ko bombota ke baka sama ni kandi na nandambe tuma idakabu tuwa ni siang ni kwa. Sa tuelinga mundu na matentu mundu nge tataka. Na yaumbula itu elingandra. Ni token ngolingoli ni token ngele. E tuna hon sala me daga tekin. Eu ne kamundo wa tu e na bindingi na 2022. O tu me na patin sodelpa. Endo sarana no manifesto na boatu ro na nitu manifesto na sodelpa. Na kenanda tu mendambe da tuan sini ko. Pala ta sa. Semba ki ono sa vitsa buliko. Sa reda na lebuni langa so tabu tu mena korna kautoki. O lang sa tu me bonuango. Nambula ni besinga. Sa bandinan dinataki. Dinan do senga mbeka ni sekla na chugoi suba. O kimami na tuina koro. O sama itu na chungo. Zora ka chungo na kasanga kimami. Sotaba chuko. Panangau na sarangango. Na kautoki. Salaki eva bandona patutu baturo mabani itu manifesto. Meto sema ni Israeli. Bila tu Israeli matangali matunga bichi to matin tulelai. Iya, dona kana nona paka yang taka babina nona yombula koi buru tu nona mbole nona matin tu. Ni nakile buni nakini nona tu bisa machingo. Me kota mo Israeli na kila e chuko bua.
me mai watore da taki na nana tu wono. O baba ni binaka. Nandambe azan siuni kwa. Kem dona turang. Sa abandone tu mena matamba se zaga batake bro me rokobi nandondonu batake na lewa ni kautoki. Itoki ni wono. O senga ni kila. Se da banda tu mai mbika chukin. Na da betamba ki somu chukin. Ni ndondonu me rokobi na nandondonu. Kena no ngala ko ni toki ni wono. O kenda tu senga talinga indona ka tu membulebo. Ko na ndondonu. Na lau i tauke sa banda bori tu. Sa tu ochi na lau i tauke. Ko e saranga ya ko e tukina na utu ina ndamula ni tauke. Na kena ya za maingo na ndondonu vatake na ngala ko na human rights. Ngo me balanga kima mi saranga. Balanga saranga vada na ko i tauke. O kere. Kera me ndikebi baka binaka. Na tikini lawa sa bandoni tu na matamboshi zoga batake bro me rokovi na nonrandondonu na itauke ni bano o kenda tu sa tu chi nando tu lawa tu nando tu itauke ni ngele nando tu ngoli tu nando tu bambo tabalotu tu nando tu tobo babonua kona kakedengo kona lawa bo zurumengo sa mai pasada na kesa. Ndona ka sanga koto me wiki me na kautuki. Wambimbi veri tambangoni. Na mbula ni budisa. San renre me vaga taka babinaka na nonrangele. Bala tana daba na ngala ke na ndondoni solibera. Lebu ngana nguniangwana, lebu na kana tabako, lebu na vila samaki. Sayali na lawanji na mbula take mai bana. Ngona ya verna ka tamanda na tinanda. Na yona tumbunda. O ndona mbula kami da. Tokongo turanga minister, ne buku ni minister ni vikabi toki. Vombo tani ne chuko batekeira. Wana nanda bali bola. Na lao baritaracho ni sigani ko. Na lao ya me bombula mbula tikitale. E kota me nganga, e kota me na kaukawa, e kota me na mbula, wana kautoki. Kona kena mai bisu take na longo me ko me na kavongo. Voka lutu sombo takasara bambu. Na kauito kei, voka lutu sombo takasara nanda banu. Ko sanga na kaubia me barta tun signi ko. E kem do na mata komiti.
Na valeu.
O baba ni benaka.
Na valeu.
E sanga talinga I le maka metu na mbulebo. E sa tuoti. Do me vanji ke wala ngana lawi toki. Na vika bo toki na ngono ya. Me revi ngaba benaka. Pande taki. Bula taken.
Naka.
O nando tu bononga talavi. E na zambi. O biti na toso tale. Ena kila I boro todo. O me ba ta sanga go kasama na single ni ko. Ni ta ka nindo na
Naka.
Ngoma na mata komiti.
Naka.
Ena tikina me ba ta sa chu kento na single mo.
Na valeu.
Ta chu no gitavi. Aba sanga kendo.
Na valeu tau, na valeu sa ngoma tino komiti na bikaw ni sabari takatiko. Na valeu. Do talbe bar takando naka. Mai ningol sa kamay. Ningol sa kamay. Limpur benaka. Riba na numituk nga, namituk nga nauton dulta nga bosa nando na lao baturi ko sa.
Yo ni wo sitio sa.
Don.
Motini ka bi wo rita ka kibini. Dura ka no mole na ngasingo. O so ni tasir ko no de kan tasir. Ora no mundo wo sitio na TV ni singa. E pa con que chana longo. Na kango sanga to wo sitio turani tase. Wo sitio. Ne wo kagango ngo sempre na kan pomu ni me viria. Do sa kana kupu sa to di sabi kibini. E muli talti wona ngasingo. Ni volangango ko so na evidence to ko biongo. Na vona ndam tigena pa muni me viria sa ni tu sa kana tori na do ke ka. O so no mata na koro o na so ni tasir. Bio ko tiga bi ko mundo so ndra kana mari ko mundo no guri ko mundo TV. Untuk usia dia usah. Ni boleh sangat pun di kakek betul pun ni bila tunggu ini orang. Usia dia usah. Biar mesti dia kemudian untuk dikit betul macam.
Nabalibu.
Untuk usia dia.
Naka.
Kuasa kendi bisa.
Nabalibu.
Kalau saya kemudian.
Ya, ni bitong ekeri. Ni bitong ekeri. Nabalibu. Sa din komiti ko na bikon sa bari takatu. Nasarbalibu.
Nasarbalibu. Kau angkat satu orang kacau.
Naka.
Ni mana sah?
Iya, sabi na sana rumbe mantan na matan dambe ko. Matsete ka bumay na matakalilay to nagiri-convene na ruwa. Ruwa na kaloko. Ha? 2 p.m. So, nabalebu. So, thank you, ladies and gentlemen who are tuning in. We will suspend our public consultation for now, and we will reconvene at 2 p.m. We'll take a short break. Thank you. Nabalebu.